Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Sauradeep Sarkar, the moderator of this call. Thank you for standing by and welcome to the webinar on communicating, collaborating, and operating in difficult times. For the duration of presentation, all participants' line will be in listen-only mode, and post that we will have a Q&A session. And now, without further delay, I would like to hand over the proceedings to our first panelist for today, Ms. Dedipia John from SHRM India. Thank you, and over to you.
Thanks, Sauradeep. Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on communicating, collaborating, and operating in difficult times, a game-changing approach for global corporations, in partnership with Pearson Talent Lens and Pearson English. This presentation is part of SHRM India's Knowledge Center. You can also use our hashtag SHRMINAR to comment on this webinar through Twitter. Today's presentation will be archived and available for viewing on the SHRM India website at www.shrmindia.org. We are saving some time at the end of today's presentation for a question and answer session with our speakers. For viewers watching the live webinar, you can submit questions at any time during the presentation. To the right of the main slide, you should see a chat tab. There's a blank for you to type in your question and then send the same to us. We will hold your questions until our presenters have finished speaking. As a reminder, today's program will last approximately 60 minutes. We would extend the session by a few minutes if needed to facilitate as many of your questions as possible. The focus of today's webinar will be to address the following: the Indian corporate training market, an overview; employee development in today's times, harnessing the true power of technology; implications for business learning, the new creative economy; comparing learning approaches; necessary shift, why organizations are shifting to blended learning; game changers, creating skill-based learning curriculum that transcend geographies and addresses specific skill deficits. Our speakers for today are Nicole Brown, Vice President, Business Solutions and GTM, Pearson English. Nicole has extensive and proven experience in software, hardware, and services consulting. In her current role with Pearson English, she leads the global business solutions and go-to-market strategy, overseeing all aspects of market requirements that drive product offerings and market placement. She focuses her career and civic outreach on how technology changes the lives of people engage and interact globally. Our second speaker for today is Shashir Shetty, National Sales Manager, Products, Pearson Talent Lens. Shashir is the National Sales Manager for Pearson Talent Lens and leads strategic delivery of Talent Lens consultative and sales goals for Talent Lens products. His deep experience in the assessment space has seen him work with more than 100 organizations across industries in designing and developing effective and innovative assessment-related strategies for talent management. With this, I would now like to turn over the mic to our first speaker, Shashir Shetty. Over to you, Shashir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dedu, for the kind introduction. And thank you, everyone, for taking time out to be a part of this webinar. Nicole and I are extremely excited to be a part of this webinar and share our thoughts on communicating, collaborating, and operating in difficult times. And while Nicole is our expert in this area, and I will let her do most of the talking, I'm actually here to set the context to this whole discussion. So what I will do in the next two slides is quickly take you all through a quick and brief overview of the Indian corporate training market and various external and internal factors affecting the learning place. The whole idea of these two slides is to ensure that we have a common understanding of the corporate training space in India right now. So very quickly moving on to the overview. So this is how the Indian corporate training market looks like. Estimate, but based on data validated from multiple sources, it seems the size of the Indian training market for the year 2014 will be about $151 million, which is roughly about 900 crores in rupee value, in rupee terms. And this market has been growing at an compounded annual growth rate of about 25% for the last 5 years. An interesting statistic is that about 40 to 45% of the spend on corporate training is consumed by freelance consultants. By freelance consultants, we here mean that it's either being consumed by freelance consultants, that is individuals, or small HR organizations or local HR organizations in different geographies. So there are not many big consolidated players in the market right now. And probably the most important statistic is that the largest chunk of this training budget is spent on English language training and soft skills training. It's almost up to 30%. The estimated spend for this year is expected to be about $47 million, that is about 300 crores. And finally, coming to one of the most interesting statistics, the online learning expenditure for 2014 is estimated to be anywhere between 10 to 15% of the total corporate training expenditure. And interestingly also, the online learning expenditure or the online learning market is actually growing at a rate 7% slower than the rate at which the Indian corporate training market is growing. And this is an extremely interesting statistic because it indicates that as a learning community we understand the importance of technology and online and digital learning. The adoption and execution of these strategies has been very limited in India. In fact, the fact that it's only 10 to 15% of the whole market, which means 90% of training is still delivered through classroom-based structures, and the fact that it's only growing at 18% as compared to 25% the rate at which the industry is growing is a very interesting statistic. Second, evolution of learning and trying to focus on some of the forces and challenges and trends that influence the learning strategies and organizations in India. One is clearly objectivity and consistency. As I told you, about 40% of today's expenditure is on freelance consultants and homegrown or local HR consultants in geographies, which means there is no way that a consistent training program can be delivered, and it becomes extremely difficult to scale up and maintain the level of consistency, especially for organizations who are located across multiple geographies in India. And I think this single factor of bringing in consistency, objectivity, and scale to training is going to play a very important role in how learning strategies are structured. I think, and the second point is the availability of talent. Ideally, for every organization, I think the situation is to pick the best talent from the market. But I think given the huge gap between demand for employable talent versus availability of such talent, this will definitely be the single largest factor influencing training spend in the coming years. Honestly, our education continues to be ineffective in producing well-rounded individuals, and someone has to bear the burden of this cost, and I think it will continue to be the corporates who will bear the burden of the cost of an ineffective education system. Though I think what we've seen in recent years is we've seen actually a change, especially this year we've seen a change. We've seen other institutes like the IITs and the NITs and the triple ITs actually investing in soft skills and communication skills training. And the hope is that if these premier institutes start internalizing such programs, the rest of the institutes will follow suit soon. I think the third most important factor influencing learning strategies is the accountability and ownership of training spend. I think the holy grail of learning continues to be the ability to link learning outcomes to business results. I think ROI seems to be the buzzword in the learning space, and this could only mean more discretion in terms of designing and delivering learning programs. And I think the fourth point is the evolution of the learner. I think amidst all the changes in the market and technology, I think we are also dealing with the change in the learner preference. I think we are already talking about 3 generations or even 4 generations in the workforce. I think learning strategies will need to evolve and be flexible to address the learning preferences of different generations and I think the different type of learners. And finally, I think the rate of technology adoption in India is extremely high. And this could only mean one thing. If the HR fraternity or the learning fraternity also adopts to technology at the same rate, online learning, I think, is going to play a much more significant role in this market in the coming years. And to the trends, 2 things. I think business learning, business English training will continue to be the largest area of focus in the coming years. I think not only because I think there are 2 reasons for this. Traditionally, it's always been the ITEA sector that has been invested in, investing on communication skills training. But in the last few years, we've actually seen companies like pharma, companies like manufacturing, companies in the financial services industry always investing in this area. And I think the single important reason is I think today your ability to communicate effectively is almost considered a proxy for your intelligence and knowledge. And secondly, cost arbitrage. A very recent study says that India will lose its cost advantage by about 2020, which will probably no longer be the cheapest destination available in the market, which only means the only way for us to survive is to move up the value chain in terms of our product and service offerings. So to summarize it, while we may not be the cheapest option, we are still the only country which, along with an English talent speaking, like an English speaking talent pool, also has talent that is abundantly gifted in great analytical skills, domain and technical expertise. The IMF expects India to be the third largest economy by 2030, and I think we are at the cusp of this revolution, a revolution that will be centered around technology, communication and collaboration, and our ability to express our technical and domain expertise to this world. So moving on, at Pearson, I think being a learning company, we have constantly tried to evolve and innovate, and I honestly think there couldn't be a better person than Nicole to share this story. I think Nicole and her team have actually constantly tried to keep pace with market changes, adopt technologies, deliver learning to learners in a way that they would like to receive it. I am really sure that you will enjoy this session as she talks about technology and online learnings and innovations and challenges and success stories in the areas of learning. Over to you, Nicole.
I am so excited to be here, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your day to spend with us. Now, so here to talk a little bit about ROI, the evolution of the learner, the top forces and challenges that are taking place today in our environment from an Indian standpoint. But what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the 6 big corporate talent trends. And then I'll take us through statistics of the market. I'll talk about the HR executive and what we've heard from you. I spent quite a bit of time in 6 different locations just recently in India, working with 300 plus, both customers as well as potential customers for Pearson English, and talking about exactly your feedback in the market, what you're seeing in your multinational corporations, what you're seeing in your local market. And what I did is I came up with what are these top 6. So when I think about our corporate talent trends, we're hearing that not only from Shashir, following up on the ROI piece and the evolution of the learner, but quite frankly, there's a couple of pieces here that are so critical to our business. Number one, not only is it the cost benefit and effectiveness, we're looking to balance the cost that we provide, if you will, to our talent and to our learners. And we also look for return on that investment from the learner, not only in a proficiency, but also in understanding how to apply business skills. So when you think about the informal learning, which Shashir had spoken about, individuals now are independently online. They're also independently going to different social media outlets in order to attain their level of English fluency and proficiency. What does that mean to us as professionals? We need to ensure that we have both structured and unstructured environments for our talent in order to learn and in order to apply those business skills. The value of mobile, anytime, anywhere learning is exploding. As we all know, we walk around with, on average, 3.5 devices with us at any time. So that's not only our laptops or our computers at work, of course, that is our tablets and our phones. And we, as again, professionals, need to provide our learners and our talent anytime, anywhere learning so that they can apply those business skills when they walk in the door for their job. The personalization around data and around technology, that's where Pearson English comes in, and we afford that opportunity at any time, anywhere, for learners to establish and to grow their skills. What I find is also very interesting is that customers, if you will, from a multinational standpoint, are still relying and trusting on big brands, which means there are a lot of providers that are coming out into the market today that provide not only technology and platforms for our talent, but they also provide blended learning, which we'll talk a little bit more about. the piece here which is critical is when you look at an organization and what that organization can provide to your learner base, and really digging deeper to understand how long these organizations have been in the market and forcing them to come to the table to help you identify the return on your investment and to work together on that efficacy of the learner. The final piece, again, is really ensuring that organizations are following the consumer trends. When we think about multiple devices, we think about social, local, global. The user experience really matters. So the next piece on what we provide, if you will, and what I've heard from the market is really talking about the top kind of 10 e-learning market statistics. Now, I'll let you look at this slide, and it, of course, will be available to you. But there are a couple of pieces here, and I know Sashir had talked about the market growth, and, you know, it ranges between 25 and 27%. But in general, this is a very large market, and it's hard as an HR executive and or an executive that really leads talent, if you will, to understand really where is the market going and how do you get, if you will, a front foot forward. So when you start thinking about these top statistics, for example, increase in training. 77% of multinational corporations use online training. E-learning keeps them on top of their industry changes. 72% of companies surveyed, and that is based on ambient insight research, surveyed has a platform that they allow their talent, if you will, access to at any time, anywhere. A big other piece here that you need to think about is content, and it requires more relevant content to the business skills that the individual is developing, so that it's not all content for everyone, but it's building content and providing content for your talent in the individual area that that individual works in within your corporation. That's really where talent shifts are moving towards, and that's where content becomes very relevant and very pointed. When you think about, for example, on number 7, corporations save 50 to 70% when they replace or augment instructor-based training with e-learning. Now, that is, again, augmentation, because when we think about our market in India, for example, we have on-staff training resources. But those on-staff training resources cannot be everywhere to everyone, right? And you've got to schedule classes, and there's a bunch of work that goes into ensuring that our instructors and our talent are in the right place at the right time. What a platform and what blended learning provides is an extension of your current staff and an extension to the learner in the way that the learner wants to consume, if you will, learning for their skill sets. So the other piece I'll just leave you with here is 23% of employees leave their jobs because of the position lacking opportunity. And when you think about building skills and we think about building our talent, this is a big piece on the war of talent, which means how do we not only extend and grow our existing talent pool internally, but how do we continue to drive and get additional talent to reach the market? So this is a very packed slide, but bear with me. I'm just going to take you through 3 different pieces here on the feedback, again, that I received from individuals such as you around the top challenges. When we think about the priorities for the HR executive office, it comes in 3 areas. 1, around talent acquisition, 2, around performance management, and 3, around learning and development. And when we think about HR as business leaders, the opportunity for the business leader to provide an extension to the workforce around e-learning is the greatest business impact that can happen, if you will, in your corporation. And when we think about that, all of what you see here is really a compilation of ensuring anytime, anywhere access to content relevant to business skills and in an area that the individual talent is ready to consume. So you think about really the development of performance management and learning and development falls into the categories of ensuring that you're not only analytically looking at the data, but you're also addressing that talent need on a continuous education, if you will, for your learners. So let's dive in. When I think about the implications for business learning, there are three that I'd like to cover off on, and they fall into the area of new tools in the war for talent. These major implications of creating a learning approach for the creative economy, and I'll talk about what that means, and a focus on business outcomes. It's not about training results. It's about the ROI that Shashir had spoken about. So let's take a look first on the war of talent. When I think about corporations, right, we're competing for above average employees. We're competing for those individuals and those employees Thank you very much for bearing with us. We had a bit of a technology challenge. I hope everyone can hear me. So let's take it from the slide that I'm at, where the stakes are even higher in emerging markets. When we think about the scarcity of talent, it makes the challenge even greater for us in India when our multinational recruiters in emerging markets face two key challenges. First, they need to identify the talent available to meet the requirements today, including English proficiency. And secondly, somehow, they need to find ways to expand that talent pool for tomorrow. We, Pearson English, use online assessments to help recruiters assess the comparative business English skills of potential candidates, and we also help ensure that the corporation can benchmark internally where they're at with their talent from a business fluency and proficiency. And as well, they comparatively benchmark against your competition so that you understand where you're at from your current talent pool and how to assess the next generation of talent. When you think about e-learning and you think about the talent pool out there, the individuals that comprise our current workspace can now really be considered as a benefit, if you will, for generations of graduates. in emerging markets. This is really the above average talent. And these individuals are the individuals we, as corporations, want to ensure not only are we employing, but we're growing. When I think about the market itself, it's a great investment. We have surveyed individuals across India, and we know that learning English is one of the greatest personal investments individuals can make. This chart shows the differentials in pay for men and women in India who can speak English as well as their native tongue. This shows you the increase in wage and salary for those individuals that can speak business English. That's where, again, that war on talent comes in. So what is the approach for creative economy? When I think about the creative economy, it really falls into two categories. We began to look at how the business world has transformed from industrial to connected to creative economy. Our learning methods must do the same. So we need to enhance the power of technology with empathy and humanity. And what does that mean? It really comes down to understanding the individual and how they work, and really understanding the extension of anytime, anywhere learning and business skill development. Classroom-only learning is a relic of the industrial economy, meaning that there is use for classroom only, but now we need to start building technology and services for our talent, again, to reach not only their needs and their business skills, but ensure that we're reaching the way that they learn. So when we think about online-only training, that brought efficiencies, right, to the connected economy. But by combining technology with humanity, we can generate greater effectiveness and greater returns on investment for both employees and corporations. So what does that mean? Most of the solutions today follow the traditional classroom route or the online connected route, and both have their challenges and limitations. When you think about time away from work, limited participation, the expense, the dissatisfaction from an employee standpoint. And really, again, what this means is how do we comprise different modalities of learning based on skills in order to address the needs of our talent. And that comes in when we think about the need of today. It's a more creative approach. Learning needs to be creative. It needs to be anytime, anywhere access. And it needs to be based on blended learning. When we think about the creative learning approach, we call it a 70-20-10 principle. And when we think about that 70-20-10, it's really based on the job. How do folks really build the business skills that they need? And then how do we build around that to integrate learning into the workflow and not make it an extra task, but just make the tools available whenever and wherever the employee needs them. From our perspective, we've changed the frame of reference for learning. Instead of helping people learn English to do their job, we understand that it's about helping people do their job in English. And that's really at the core of when we think about understanding our current learner environment. It means different solutions for the workforce, for the professionals, for critical talent, and for executives. And let me just pause here for a minute, because this is really important, right? Not every single one of our talent is the same. We have different levels of talent. We have our high potentials. We have individuals that are professionals in place. We have our general knowledge workers across the organization. And each one of these individuals within our talent pool need and require different approaches for learning, different approaches for skill sets and skill building. So I'll pull out an example here when I think about critical talent. Critical talent is, for example, those managers, those individuals that are your high potential employees. Those individuals may require one-on-one coaches, if you will. Those individuals may require skill sets around negotiating, skill sets around leading and empowering teams. That's where understanding the approach for the workforce comes into play, and it's critical for organizations to really understand what that means. So the final piece is the business outcomes. I think that's why we're all here today, is to really understand what are the right business outcomes that we need to transform how we measure success of language learning in the workplace. It's an area that we're all highly attuned when we think about our different budgets, right? And we think about that cost for each learner on average of $3,500 US. That's a lot of impact for the individual, but how do we measure our return on that investment? We need to move away from the traditional, because we talked about the industrial economy from classroom only. We talked about connected economy from online only, into blended learning, the creative economy. And when you think about that, in the creative economy, we need to align with business outcomes and ultimately financial performance. So how do we measure that, the financial performance? There are a couple of different areas, and we call out 4 when we work with our customers, and we sit down and we employ, if you will, these 4 areas to understand cost reduction, the talent management, the productivity, and the customer satisfaction. The good news is that we're beginning to see the emergence of metrics showing real improvements in business outcomes to support your business cases. So again, from our perspective, it is critically important that we sit down and map out where the business wants to go, where your talent currently is, and where you want your talent to be. And then we map out that return on investment from both standpoints, from our standpoint, potentially as a provider, as well as from your standpoint. And we detail that business case so that you can understand what that ROI looks like. So what does that mean, right? Why are organizations shifting to these different approaches? And when we think about really understanding shifting to the blended learning perspective, when I talked a little bit about the 70-20-10, that 70% is critical. That's the area of the on-the-job experience. That's when each one of us, every day, we show up at work. That's where we're going to build our business skills. That's where we think about productivity, we think about customer satisfaction, and we think about really understanding how to get ahead of our competition. The 20% is informal learning, learning from peers, going from a, if you will, an online, a social, right, reaching out, if you will, to all of the different forms and approaches of learning that can be afforded to each one of us. And the 10% is that formal learning. That's the piece here that we're discussing, but it's 10%. So when you think about how do we get that 70% on the job experience, it really, again, is looking at all of the aspects and modalities of our approach delivered in the context of work. And that's the piece that really is critical when you think about not only face-to-face, you think about virtual, you think about online and on delivery anytime, anywhere. In all of those different aspects, today is the future. So when I think about the collaboration trends, in the past it was face-to-face or you go online. Today, we go online. There's also virtual, and then of course we have tutors or we have in-house training expertise and experiences. That trend moving towards blended, which is over to the right, that's the piece of classroom to blended with virtual, which means not only do you have face-to-face, you do that virtually. And the virtual blended learning experience is shifting. You may have heard of the term flipped classroom. This term will become very important as we continue to look at the market and the market trends. A flipped classroom approach means we provide the data and the detail and the learning experience to the talent to learn whatever it is they may be developing on their business skills. But when they actually show up for their quote-unquote class virtually, they're employing those business skills. So for example, I use negotiating, building negotiation skills. This is an area. Or building competency from a call center perspective. We provide the learning, if you will, materials, but when that individual joins their virtual group online, they're actually delivering on those business skills. So they're delivering the presentation. They're working with a very small group between 4 and 8 individuals to actually build those skills and develop those skills. That's what we mean by virtual, blended, and the flipped classroom is really where corporations are going. So when we think about it, it's mass collaboration, right? It's the future for us to continue to drive from a competitive nature and stay ahead. And of course, when you combine collaboration and innovation with size and scale, you're pretty much unbeatable. And that's exactly where our customers are looking at their return on investment. So corporations are investing millions in collaborative platforms to harness the innovation of their global workforce. And when we think about the secret, it's about the collaborative platform that is all you have to speak in the single platform of language from a business English standpoint. So this is in February of 2014, The Economist quoted the growing number of firms worldwide that are adopting English as their common language. These are just a few. This is exactly where the market is moving towards when you think about a multinational corporation. Multinational corporations are now blurring, if you will, the lines and ensuring that there is a single common language framework in order to conduct and drive business. That's where business English comes in. And collaboration requires that common language. When you think about really driving the equation, if you will, innovation requires collaboration, collaboration requires communication, communication requires the common language, and that common language is business English. So let me talk just a little bit about some of the existing return on investment that we've seen from our customers when we think about cost reduction. And I'll go through each one of the 4 that I had called out earlier. So from a cost reduction standpoint, this is really around reducing waste on training unsuitable candidates. So as we have our candidate pool and our recruiting pool, we look at ensuring that we're developing those skill sets. And when you think about really reducing the number of modalities and approaches, if you will, so for example, a fragmented approach to learning would be face-to-face and would be testing. So actually, when you create a left-to-right learning modality experience that has the blended learning content, we've seen 70% of cost reduction applied to that, which is significant savings. When I think about, for example, Access Worldwide, one of our customers, they have been able to save over $750,000 per 1,000 employees, multiply that, a year on measuring the improvement of the business outcomes with the blended learning approach. When I think about, for example, their candidacy pool, they were able to improve their candidacy pool by 20%. And that means, again, outreaching to understand how to recruit new talent to bring into the organization. And that means the retainment of talent as well, so that you're not only bringing in your talent, you're keeping them. Marvel, for example, view access to Global English and Pearson English as a benefit and opportunity for personal and professional growth. When I had talked earlier about the individuals and not only their wage increases, but also the stickiness of staying with the corporation as they grow. 97% of subscribers, for example, would recommend the platform when we think about the different modalities of services to colleagues and to additional individuals and multinationals in the market. The next piece is DHL. So when I think about productivity, DHL has seen an annual gain of about around £2 million through improvement of business English. And that is not only from a financial reward standpoint, it really is increasing participation across their talent pool globally. And again, connecting the dots of a multinational across all of the different areas and geographies. That's critical when you think about really understanding the return on investment. And I hope some of these statistics get you thinking about, okay, how am I measuring my return on investment? As I continue to, for example, invest in my talent, what are the goals and what are those measurable metrics that you can draw, if you will, for your business and then measure back? So, for example, the next piece is around Aero. 76% of Aero employees are better able to respond to questions and provide assistance, 84% improvement in understanding emails, and 78% in improvement in writing emails. So just in general, when you think about communication, right? Communication comes in verbal forms, it comes in writing, and it comes within the context of collaborating, not only with customers, but your supply chain. And again, understanding how to effectively draw correlations to your metrics. And we call it efficacy, which is really measuring that return on investment. So what I'd like to do is I've just got a few more pieces here, but when you think about measurable improvement, these are 4 areas that we, for example, consult with our customers to identify how you can look at your internal organization. How do you benchmark your organization across the competitive landscape? And then what do you apply from a learning modality and different approaches for your talent based on who they are, right, and how they do their work and what business area they're in. So, for example, we found across all of our existing customers, 92% apply their skills immediately. And that comes in different forms such as skill shops, where it could be anywhere from a 1 hour to a full day experience where you're learning your particular business skill. Cost reduction, as much as 70% cost reduction to replace that fragmented approach. Again, ensuring that you're tying together the different learning modalities. Productivity, measuring by hour, by week, what those cost savings are to you as a multinational corporation based on your employees' productivity on the job. And then again, of course, customer satisfaction, not only from our perspective, but your customer satisfaction in engaging with the company. So there's just a couple of keys to success as I wrap up. Align human capital with strategic investments to global talent, which is really understanding that skills gap in your current employees, as well as you go out and recruit new employees and learners. Adjusting the learning approach to how people learn in the creative economy, and measure business impact, not time spent in learning. That's a critical piece for us. And from our perspective, it really is, this is just one example around skill shops, right? If you think about the 70, 20, 10, 70%, again, is all about learning on the job. So if you can provide job skills to your talent based on the common language, English, business English, you can build that efficacy and that return on your investment cost effectively, and you can measure exactly what that return on investment looks like for each one of your learners. So in closing, I want to first say thank you so much for the time. We have been enabling corporations to communicate, collaborate, and operate inside and outside of India. We have over 18,000 learners across 74 corporations in the India market that then, if you will, are based in India and work externally and globally. And I'm really very excited to look forward to answering some of your questions.
We are through with the presentation now, and we will start with the Q&A session. I request Shashir to please take up some of the questions that have already come in so far. And also to the audience, please continue to send in your questions to us. Over to you, Shashir.
Hi. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Devu. Nicole, we have a very interesting question from Lily Agustin, I think. Her question is, isn't it important to assess the competency levels of the recipient before we move to creative learning? I think what she's trying to ask is there a particular type of people or a particular type of talent that is going to better benefit from a blended learning approach or a creative learning approach? Is there a population or a a cohort in an organization that can be isolated for such blended training programs, or is it applicable across all employees?
I'd love to take that question. Thank you so much for it. When you think about your workers, right, they fall into 4 different work categories. So yes, it can be applicable to all of your workers, but each individual and each job requires a different approach. And that's where, again, getting back to how do you define your return on your investment. So for example, critical talent, my high potential employees, managers, individuals that we want to invest in may require one-on-one coaching, personalized coaching. They may require a virtual or a face-to-face experience that I may not provide to all of my talent. Maybe, perhaps, you would provide business skills to a category or a group of individuals that are very specific to their needs and their business requirements, rather than, again, ensuring that, one shoe fits all. And we also, of course, always want to provide a platform for all of our employee base, but getting down to that very specific approach in learning is going to provide you not only a cost benefit to you, but also the ability to identify each one of the talent and provide them very specific, measurable results.
Great. Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, absolutely. I just see a question here on how do you determine and recognize unsuitable candidates. And this is a piece where it comes into understanding assessments and understanding the talent and the talent's ability, not only on new recruits, right? So as you're recruiting, you need to absolutely understand the ability of the individual. And that's where, for example, assessments come in. And there are many different assessment types. There is a comprehension, writing, reading. There's combined when you think about how do we assess our talent, so that even when you're bringing in new talent, you know exactly where they're at within their business skills and within their ability to communicate, collaborate, and operate in business English. The unsuitability of talent comes in when you're able to assess your entire workforce, and then you band that workforce based on not only their proficiency, but also their business skills.
Nicole, I'm going to club 2 questions here. There's a question from Prashant and Swaroop, and I think these questions are related in my opinion. I think what Prashant asks is, what is the biggest challenge in e-learning? And I've always believed that one of the biggest challenge in e-learning is to increase the completion rate. And Swaroop asked the same question. So how do you motivate employees for browsing through and completing online courses?
That is a challenge. And so I have 2 different ways to answer that from my perspective. Number 1, motivating an employee to complete, for example, e-learning, it comes in a couple of different forms. When you think about the generations, right, if you have an online platform that has rewards and recognition, that is essential for certain levels, if you will, of generation. But more so, it's the ability to add on the advisor approach, which means really having someone that can reach out via email, via phone, drop in a text in a mobile environment, and really help that learner stimulate, if you will, their continued progression in learning. But the other way I want to answer this is you cannot just provide an e-learning platform. We each have very busy daily lives, right? The first time I go on to a new platform, I'm super excited. The next day, I have 40 phone calls to make, right, and customer presentations. By the week's end, I'm no longer going to go online to this platform that you've asked me to do, right? So what we need to do as executives is provide services around a platform that provide that human experience and that creative experience when you think about learning, so that I am stimulated to learn and I'm now applying it to my business skills. So for example, I have management by objectives. My management by objectives say that I need to increase customer satisfaction by 3 points in a quarter. So how am I as an individual employee measured by that? Well, I'm now going to be required to take a business skill course in accent reduction. I'm going to be required to increase my level of proficiency on the e-learning platform. I will be required to participate in a virtual classroom specific around increasing employee satisfaction. But that's how you build the approaches around those individuals and keep them motivated.
Okay, Nicole, the next question, this is by Satyanarayan. Is there a good period or a good period of time to measure effectiveness? I'm saying, is there a time from they start the learning program to about, say, 3 months or 100 days or 6 months? Is there a good time? Is there a scientifically defined timeline before you measure training effectiveness?
Yeah, so here's the difference. So, gone are the days of let me increase my English proficiency from level 5 to level 6, right? That could be a year, that could be 4 years. We don't have time in multinational business to, number one, provide the cost to us for our talent to increase that level of fluency. What we need is immediate business impact, and that's where I've seen, and for example, many of our customers in India, when I was speaking to them, are starting to employ a quarterly-based metric outcome. So that means, again, getting very concise in a very structured manner, the individual and where you want that individual talent to be. So it's not necessarily, again, growing my my CFA or my TOEFL. It's more so about how am I employing business skills and what am I being measured on as an individual. And if I can be measured quarterly for my results, that is where you see the impact. So many of our customers are looking at this from a quarter-over-quarter standpoint and or in a 6-month chunk. But what I found in employing a very structured environment on the platform, so the e-learning platform, and then very structured in the I want to call them experiences, but in the kind of courses, right, and with tutoring and coaching, you can actually start to see level increases, if you will, and proficiency increases within 90 days.
Perfect. So here's another question from Anomitra, because it says, how can you as a buyer make sure you select the best blended learning program?
It goes back to understanding your metrics. So really, it's twofold. Number one, benchmarking internally. So that means where is the talent today? So you assess your existing talent pool. Once you've assessed your existing talent pool based on assessments of comprehension, reading, writing, then you can say, okay, where are those bands of employees and how do I measure effectiveness of increasing their job skills? So the corporation needs to set forth your metrics in understanding how to ban those employees based on the assessment and benchmarks, and then you can start to develop what are those groups, if you will, that need the different approaches, if you will, to blended learning, right? There could be many groups that may need a modality of a coach as well as the online platform. There could be individual groups that may require business skills in very specific areas of your business. And that also means, for example, looking at what your business needs are and developing, assisting you developing very specific content for your company where we're training on your, IT manual, or we're training on the way you approach your customer or your selling ability. So it really depends, but the first step is benchmarking, understanding where you're at, and then also benchmarking your competitors. So where is your competitor and what is their landscape in talent versus yours? And how do you stack rank? So those are areas of really looking across your business where we help from an assessment standpoint.
Thanks, Nicole. There's another question from Prakash Nair. It says, how do we effectively control attrition on strategically developed critical talent? So how can training help in managing critical talent? I'm not sure if you answered this before, but would you like to take this up?
Absolutely. So when I think about critical talent, let me give you an example. My CEO and general manager of Pearson English is a native French individual. Her name is Karine Alou-Seleman. And Karine is a very fluent business English speaker. However, she is absolutely my critical talent, and I provide to Karine an executive coach, which is an individual that she communicates with either on the phone or via virtual with Skype or GoToMeeting, and they work through either presentations that she's giving to the board, or they work through an article on Financial Times that was delivered to her inbox, you know, through Pearson English, so that she can continue to build her common framework around business English. And that executive coach works with her on nuances of articulation, ensuring from an accent standpoint, right, really working on those kind of very detailed individual areas. So critical talent can form not only from executive coaches and individual coaches, but advisors, and also very small groups, where I have Karine, for example, in a very small group around negotiating. And she works with other individuals at her level in a very small group and understanding skills with English as the foundation, but it's the skills that she's building in order to really work, if you will, the English language.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicole. There's a question by Nitesh. I think I will take this up, and then Nicole, you can also add your points. And his question is why face-to-face learning is going down, it gives more value. Honestly, we don't believe that face-to-face learning is going down or it doesn't add value, but the point is there are pros and cons of all types of learning, and the cons with face-to-face learning is, one, a face-to-face learning or a classroom-based learning is typically a one-size-fits-all approach, which means an adult learning theory says that for somebody to learn and transfer the knowledge onto the job, it is very important that they're placed at a learning level that is most appropriate. And this is the primary premise on which the classroom-based learning fails, because we have identified a common training model for a set of people with different training needs. And secondly, once people go out of the classrooms, there is no way to measure training effectiveness after they've gone out, or measure whether there's a transfer of learning that has happened. But the difference in online learning is it's predominantly based on the principle of learning by doing, which is you're learning on the job or you're learning by doing activities, which indicates that the chances of the transfer of learning happening is relatively higher. Nicole, would you want to add to that?
No, I absolutely agree. And there is a place for face-to-face. So it's not a complete elimination. And the place for a face-to-face classroom is traditionally for your knowledge workers, for kind of the general audience, right? But the shift in the classroom content is what you're seeing happen and occur. To Shashir's comment, content needs to be relevant to the individual. And that's where the shift of face-to-face classrooms, it's not about learning, you know, from a proficiency level 5 to a proficiency level 6, right, and practicing your grammar. It's much more of that business skill set is where face-to-face classroom learning is moving towards.
Perfect. And I think we have one question. So in organizations where a business impact is not necessarily tracked and measured, so if the training is not privy to data like customer satisfaction scores or sales revenues or numbers, are there proxies to measure effectiveness of training that they can do at their level?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where we spend a bunch of time with our customers on the onset, if you will, really identifying how to get at potentially those intangible metrics. So it's easy, it's somewhat easy to understand customer sat or revenues or de-escalations, right, the number of hang-ups or whatever that may be if you're in a customer-facing role. But understanding also the internal metrics that you're driving as strategically as a business. And that's where we work back and forth together on helping you identify what those metrics are. And every corporation is individual in that approach. There could be, for example, share of voice, which means really benchmarking you against the market and understanding how to increase your share of voice or your penetration in the market. But then how do you actually do that, right? And how do you ensure that you have the results that you can then measure back on? Pearson, overall, just 1 year ago, with John Fallon joining us, set forth in the market that we would be reporting on efficacy, which is our return on investment and our business outcomes to the market by 2016. And that means we are internally looking at each one of our business divisions to understand what are the metrics, how do we get at those metrics, and then how do we report back. So there is fundamentally a shift in multinational corporations in understanding that efficacy, and that's a piece that we have. We have many different divisions of our organization focused specifically around working with our multinational companies and customers to get to those business metrics.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicole. I think it is 4:30. Do we have time for more questions? Or?
Hello. Yes, we can take in one more question, please.
Sure. So, Nicole, this is an interesting question. And the question is, when it comes to blended learning, is it standardized, customized, or personalized?
Yes. So blended learning, there is a standard, if you will, for the modalities. So, for example, virtual classroom, which is more of a flipped classroom environment, again, where the talent goes and they do their studying and then they come into the virtual environment. And they actually employ, right, the business skills that they had just learned. But when you think about the customization, that is the critical piece, right, because each company is very different, each talent and individual may be different. And when you think about banding your employees, that's where that comes in to really develop the specific blended learning approaches and skills needed for each area of the talent, because your high potentials in your managers will be potentially could look very differently from an e-learning, if you will, experience than would be your general workforce. So absolutely customized, absolutely being creative in the approach when you look across your entire pool of talent. Did that answer the question?
Right. It did, Nicole. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. So I think we've come to the end of our webinar now. Dedu, over to you.
Shashir, I would like you to take up the next slide, please, on the white papers and the insights.
Thank you. So I think there are, so these are some of the white papers that are available. So this is to all the participants. If you would like to go through any of these white papers, or if you would like a copy of these white papers or insights, please do write to us. I think there was a question from Golpi Dattatreya saying, how do you measure cost? What is the cost impact compared from e-learning to classroom? We actually have some white papers on this, that is measuring the impact of business English learning and working. So I'd be happy to share that with you. So please do write to me or Shilpa. The email is mentioned there, or you could even write to Nicole. We'll be happy to share all these documents. And for all the questions that we've not answered, we will make sure that we collect these questions and we respond to you separately on this.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for spending the time with us today.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Shashir. Now we would also like to take this opportunity to share some details on the SHRM annual conference to be held in Gurgaon on 25th and 26th of September at the Leela Ambience. The theme for this year's conference is Connect, Inspire, Grow, Connections that Stimulate, Workplaces that Inspire. Besides knowledge sessions, participants can look forward to an exciting evening of HR awards and entertainment. Our keynote speaker for the event will be Mr. Ron Kaufman, the New York Times best-selling author. He is the book author, columnist, management consultant, keynote speaker, and founder of the customer service training company, Up Your Service. Some of the other eminent speakers include Ashok Alexander, Rain F. Cascio, Sunita Bhuyan, and Rimple Chawla. Seeing the success of the past two conferences, we can confidently say that this year it will be a bigger, better conference with over 650 HR professionals networking and sharing best practices. You can also meet our webinar partners for today, Pearson, at our conference. As attendees viewing the live webinar, you can receive a 10% discount on the standard pricing for the conference by using the promo code SHRMINAR when you register. This offer is valid till September 5th. To know more about our conference, please feel free to contact us at shrmiac@shrm.org or call on our toll-free number 1800-103-2198. Please take a moment to give us your thoughts about today's program. A link will pop up on your screen once the webinar is over. Please fill out the survey and let us know what you think. It helps us assess today's program and plan for future events. And that brings us to the end of today's webinar. The archived version of this webinar will be available shortly on our website, www.shrmindia.org. A big thank you to our presenters, Nicole Brown and Shashir Shetty, for their time and the valuable insights they shared with us today. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.
Thanks, Dev.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.
I would like to thank all the participants who have joined us. Hope you all have spent a useful time. With this, we conclude the webinar for today. I wish you all a great day ahead. Thank you.